Director of Ivy Bound. I'm Mark Greenstein, and with me is one of our experts, and especially expert at the topic that you're going to hear. But Jesse Tendler, who is a Penn Wharton graduate, an engineer, and a longstanding tutor of ours, is here for the sake of students and parents. We've invited both, and it is about interviewing for colleges. And so he's based in New York, but he helps people throughout the country. With that, I'll turn it over. Mr. Tendler, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'm happy to be here tonight. Happy to help folks prepare and go through this whole college admissions process, which can be somewhat stressful, and demystify it a little bit for you. So the topic that I chose to talk about tonight is specifically about interviewing for college. Obviously, there are lots and lots of topics that I could have chosen to talk about, but this is one that often gets overlooked. So I think it's important to mention it and to talk a little bit about it. So interviews are a part of the college process, the college admissions process, but they are sometimes presented as being optional. So that's the first thing I want to talk about today. If a college says you have a choice, you can either have an interview or not have an interview. The question that I would pose to you is, what should you do? And the answer to that question is pretty simple. You should always take the interview. An interview can pretty much never hurt, and it can almost always help. The one exception to that, I would say, is if a student just is nonverbal or has no social skills whatsoever, then possibly an interview would not help. But in almost all circumstances, an interview will help your chances of getting in. So it's always good to take an interview. And if you are offered an interview, it generally means that the school is interested in you. So that's often a good sign. Now, that's true, of course, if you've already submitted an application. Some schools will offer you an interview before you've even submitted your application. In any case, you should always take that interview. So there are different types of interviews, though. There are what we would refer to as evaluative interviews, and then there are more informational interviews. There are also interviews that are conducted by the admissions office, and then there are interviews that are conducted by alumni or volunteers for the university. So it's important to know which type of interview you're getting. Are you interviewing with the admissions office? Is this an admissions officer and someone who is making a decision about whether or not you will be getting into this university? Or is it an alumnus who has volunteered to interview prospective students and is just a happy emissary of the university? So it makes a big difference, first of all, because obviously if you're being interviewed by an admissions officer, that interview is probably going to be more directed to questioning you about your resume, your activities. Whereas if you are being interviewed by an alum, it's more likely to be more of a conversation that is less high pressure, more just conversational. But regardless of which one it is, it's important to do your research because they want to know that you are interested in that university. So you always want to make it seem like that university is your top choice. That is a very important thing to do in an interview, is to make sure that they think and know that you have done your homework and that you know a lot about that particular university or college. So you want to do your homework. And what I mean by that is you want to get on that school's website and you want to do a lot of research. You want to find out anything and everything you can about the campus, about the academic programs. In particular, if there's a specific program that you're applying to, if you're applying to, let's say, the engineering school or to the business school, or to you want to major in psychology, then you should be sure to specifically do research on the program or degree or major that you are interested in pursuing once you're there. So that is is really important to do that research. And when you've done that research, you want to not only know that they have whatever major you're interested in pursuing, but even do some research into which professors are in that department or are involved in that particular major. What types of research are those professors doing? Are they involved in outside research outside of their teaching? That's especially important at an upper level, top tier university. Most of the full-time tenured professors are doing research in various topics as part of their job, as part of being there at the university. They're doing a lot of research. They're not just teaching. So it's really important to do some research and find out what is it that they are researching outside of the classes that they're teaching, and do any of those topics really interest you? And if you can find a topic that really interests you that is being researched by a professor at that university, it's a great topic to discuss with whoever's going to be interviewing you. So keep that in mind, do that research. Another point of research that I would say is important and very often overlooked, but also isn't always possible, is to research the person who's actually going to be interviewing you. If you know in advance who the interviewer is, whether it's an admissions officer or an alum of the university, you want to do a little bit of Google searching and see if you can track down information about that person so you can learn a little bit about them. You might want to know what their hobbies are, what their interests are. It used to be that when interviews tended to be more in person, you could look around their office or their living room or wherever you were doing the interview and note, oh, look, they've got a picture of themselves at a baseball game. They've got some baseball paraphernalia around the room. So I know they're interested in baseball. So maybe that's a topic that I'll ask them about or something that we can connect on. So in general, anything that you can find out about the person nowadays, since a lot of interviews happen via Zoom, you might have to do some more digging on the internet to find information about them, but just trying to figure out where they work if they're an alum and not an admissions officer at the university, what their interests are, hobbies. And if you can't find that information out through research, then at a certain point in the interview, they're going to open it up to questions. So you want to make sure that you have some questions prepared for them. You do not want an interview to be one-sided. You don't want it only to be them asking you questions. So it's really, really, really important that you have some questions prepared in advance to ask them. If it's an admissions officer asking you questions and interviewing you, then you want to ask them questions about, let's say, the department that you might be interested in applying to, about maybe research going on there. You might want to ask them about student life, about extracurricular activities that you might be interested in participating in, community service opportunities that you might be interested in. One of the things that they're looking for in an interview is to see that you would be an active part of the campus, an active part of the community in campus life. So you want to show them that you have an interest in campus life, that you're interested in what's going on there other than just taking classes. So that is something to remember in terms of just what you want to show them and also what you can ask more questions about. And if the person interviewing you is an alumnus, then you might want to ask them about their time at the university. What did they like about it? What did they not like about it? That's just as valid a question as asking what they like. It's important to see if they will admit to any negatives. You don't necessarily want to point out negatives that you've seen, but you might ask them, if they could say what the best and worst aspects of their time at the university were. That would be a good question to ask. So again, this is a conversation that you're having with them. It should not be just them grilling you. And of course, if they're a good interviewer, they will make sure to ask you for your questions as well. It looks like, talking about questions, we got a couple of questions in the chat. So I'm going to look at this. It says, what about alumni interviewers who are deputized to evaluate the candidates? Yes, this is an important question. And there are a lot of alumni interviewers who are part of alumni interview programs where they have been trained. They've been doing this for years. And it's not just purely informational. They do report back to the admissions department. So once you've had an interview, even if it's with an alum and not with someone from the admissions department, that alum will take notes. They'll write down their feelings and opinions from that interview afterwards, and they'll then report back to the admissions office. So if you can have a great conversation with that person, it will greatly help your chances of getting into that college or university. Um, it won't be the final decision on whether you get in or not, but it is an important part of the process, and it does have an impact. And again, that's why I say that it can really help. It's not necessarily going to hurt if the interview doesn't go amazingly well or you don't become best friends with the interviewer. But it could really help if you can show that person that you are very interested in the university, that you've done your research, that you have thoughtful questions, and that you care about them, and that you're interested in really being a part of that university community. Another question that I see that came in says, if I am given an alumni interviewer and find nothing about the person online, can I ask the admissions office if they can send me that person's CV or LinkedIn profile? Absolutely. Yeah, you can, by all means, feel free to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. So if you're being interviewed by an alumni interviewer and you can't, and they don't have an internet presence, feel free to ask the admissions office for information about that person. If you can find them on LinkedIn or anywhere else on the internet without having to ask the admissions office, that's great. But if you need to ask, by all means, do so, and that's fine. All right, that is the last question that I have in the chat. So I'll just emphasize, oh, wait, one more. What if I'm not yet
That one's from me.
Okay, thanks, Mark. What if I'm not yet exceptionally interested in their university? It's one of 7 that I applied to, but I don't know whether it's my number one. Good question. That's a great question. And oftentimes you won't necessarily either know what your number one is, or it might not be the school that you're getting the interview for. I would say I would not recommend lying and telling them like, I love this school more than any other. However, you should still show them that you are very interested. And if they ask you specifically, is this your top choice? What you can say, what the best answer, if it is your top choice, the best answer is yes, 100%, this is my top choice. If it's not your top choice, the best answer is, I'm not sure yet. I'm applying to many different schools, still doing my research, and I am very interested in this school, and I'm really looking forward to finding out more about it. So that's a great way around that question without telling them that it's not your top choice, without committing to it being your top choice, but letting them know that it's still a school that you're very interested in. And if you're taking the time to do an interview with them and to apply to the school, it should at least be a school that you are interested in attending, even if it's not your top choice. Otherwise, why are you applying in the first place? So yeah, I would say in that respect, definitely, you don't go out of your way to lie about it being your top choice if it's not. But do still do your research, do still have questions prepared, and find out what you can about that school, about things that are available to you at that school that you're interested in. Like I said, do your research on what type of research is happening at that school, what type of internships might be available, what type of extracurriculars are happening, what type of clubs are on campus. Because at any school you're applying to, there are going to be things that you're very interested in and passionate about at that school. So you can find ways to be interested and to show the admissions officer that you're interested, even if it's not your top choice school. And even just by preparing questions, that's going to be a way to show that you have an interest. I do have one more question that just came in. If I'm only interested in their academic program for my desired career choice and not other areas of the school, such as clubs or athletics, how do I appear genuinely interested in student life? Well, I would say if you are very passionate about their academic program, if there's a specific academic program that they have, and that is the best academic program for what you want to do. It's the academic program you really want to apply to and get into. Then focus more on the academic program. Focus on the research that's being done at that school. Focus on the professors who you would have the opportunity to study with. And if they ask you about extracurriculars, they don't expect everyone to be involved in extracurriculars. You can tell them that you really want to focus on this particular academic area and you would like any of your work outside of your classes to be focused on research in that academic area. You might also want to find out if there are clubs, not necessarily athletic clubs, but if your area of interest is, let's say, environmental science, and there's a club that is about environmental science issues, and let's say it's a plant adaptability research group that like is involved in the biology department or the botany department or something like that. It might be something that you find that there are particular student groups that like pertain to your academic interests as opposed to non-academic extracurricular. You don't have to find a school that or have to be interested in athletics or a hobby. Like you could be a terrific ping pong player but have no interest in playing ping pong once you get to college. That's fine. But let's say you are, like the example I picked, you want to major in biology. You might want to find out if there are student groups that are specifically oriented around biology, and what sort of research you can do, what sort of seminars or conferences there are related to the academic topics that you're interested in. I guarantee that a school is going to have some sort of student group or club that it pertains to your academic interests, not necessarily your other outside hobbies. So there are ways to be involved in the university community, and not just in your classes, that still pertains to your academic interests. So I would look into that, not only for the interview purposes, but just for your own benefit of really integrating into university life and being a part of that college campus and getting the most out of it. You'll get more out of it if you're more involved, even if it's just within your academic arena. All right. So that's our last question. Again, I'll just run down real quickly some of the most important points that I mentioned, which are do your research. That's key topic here. Do your research. And what I mean by that, again, is do all of your research on who's interviewing you, your research on the college, the university, the academic departments you're interested in applying to, the professors who work there and work specifically in that major or department. Do your research into the type of research that's happening at that university and what sort of research you could get involved in while you're there outside of your classes. Even do research into what classes are being offered. If you can mention a specific class that you read about that you're excited about, that reflects well on you. You did your research, you even looked at the classes that are offered. They love to see that. And then remember to have questions. So you are prepared to ask them some questions about the university also to show your interest and your curiosity. So those are all of my tips today. And I hope that helps, and good luck, and
Hey,
may
thank
you
you.
interview well.